Chairman Brenner, Vice Chair Blessing, Ranking Member Ingram, and members of the Senate Education Committee, thank you for this opportunity to provide opponent testimony on Senate Bill 34. My name is Gary Daniels. I am here representing the ACLU of Ohio. I would like to make clear exactly what SB 34 is and is not. At its core, SB 34 is a plainly obvious attempt to impose explicit religious beliefs and practices on young captive audiences in our public schools. This is not a new phenomenon. It is but the latest coordinated effort of a decades-long demand. In the case of SB 34, passage of this bill will result in 10 Commandments displays in all classrooms, in all schools, in some school districts. Other schools will surely opt for 10 Commandments monuments on school grounds, purposely situated for students to pass every day as they enter school. Both scenarios are permitted and envisioned via SB 34. Of course, many of the students who will be evangelized via SB 34 do not share these same sectarian beliefs mandated via the 10 Commandments. They were brought up differently, or they came to their own conclusions on matters of faith, religion, and spirituality. They and their families follow different religions. They have different beliefs, or none at all. It is also important to note this religious imposition repeats itself across school faculty, school staff, and school volunteers who maintain different beliefs, different conclusions, and different religions. Supporters of SB 34 try to wave away these concerns in two distinct ways. First, they accurately point out the 10 Commandments is but one choice a school district can make for display among a list of other historical documents such as the Magna Carta, Declaration of Independence, and so on. SB 34 forces no school to display the 10 Commandments, as they say. Those claims are true. They also do not reflect ongoing plotting and practical realities. You see, passage of SB 34 is only the first step for many SB 34 supporters. Pass the bill and they will focus their energy and resources on school districts across Ohio, demanding they choose the 10 Commandments as one of the documents for display, or perhaps the only one. Of course, not every school district will agree to this, but supporters would surely be happy with any amount of classrooms and school grounds with such religious displays. Anything is better than zero. Even better for their efforts, SB 34 encourages and allows SB 34 supporters to donate displays and monuments, including the 10 Commandments, at no cost to districts and schools. The second way supporters of SB 34 attempt to minimize well-founded concerns is to couch the 10 Commandments as crucial to the founding and governance of the United States, like the other documents permitted for display via SB 34. This is an attempt to whitewash the holy religious origins and applications of the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments are not the 10 helpful hints. They are not the 10 friendly suggestions. They are, as the name suggests, commandments, religious commandments. Do not worship other gods. There is only one. On one particular day of the week, you must worship this God. You are forbidden from referring to this God in a dishonorable or profane way. There is no way to secularize or dilute this language to strip it of its religious significance. All of the 10 Commandments are religious in nature, although some certainly have an application to civil governance. But some fail that test as well. Coveting someone else's spouse or partner, coveting their possessions, disobeying or dishonoring one's parent or parents, committing adultery. All these actions are forbidden by the 10 Commandments, but they all mean zero to the founding and ongoing governance of our country. That leaves maybe 3 commandments, but more like 2.5, with any historical overlap, application, or importance to our founding and government. Do not murder, do not steal. Of course, it is no exaggeration to say these 2 principles are foundational to every organized legal system and government across the world. These principles also predate the Bible and exist exclusive of religion or religious guidance. Although SB 34 seems to frame the 10 Commandments as the sole reason for these values' adoption into United States law and society. The remaining commandment regards lying or bearing false witness about another. True, this is also a bedrock of our country's legal jurisprudence, although again, the same can be said about every other country in society, including those predating biblical times. The difference here is people can and do lie without breaking the law, all the time, every day. Only some lying is legally forbidden. In addition, there has long been debate and disagreement among Christians themselves about how broadly this 9th commandment applies. That is, does it apply to only legal proceedings, or does it apply to each and every personal, non-legal interaction? So that leaves only 2.5 commandments out of 10 with any relevance whatsoever to our founding and government. But I am not here to pretend a few fundamental principles of all societies that also happen to be reflected in the 10 Commandments is a legitimate reason for requiring or allowing the display of unequivocally religious precepts in Ohio's public schools. Indeed, the motivation of many SB 34 supporters is official imposition of their particular religious beliefs on those who do not share them. It is the hijacking of government and schools to make it happen. It follows the same playbook as the decades of effort that resulted in the overturning of Roe versus Wade. It is the same playbook now openly described and being fashioned to target legal same-sex marriage. It is a playbook designed to generate lawsuits, get those cases before sympathetic judges, and hope for what they think is the best outcome. Outcomes they hope will finally materialize, as happened with Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. Outcomes they are pushing more aggressively as they witness a country growing both more secular and more religiously pluralistic. In the case of SB 34, it is the 1980 Stone v. Graham decision from the Supreme Court of the United States supporters seek to unravel and bury. Of course, it does not have to be this way. Schools do not need SB 34 to display historical documents in their classrooms and on their grounds. Schools should not have to be pawns in larger culture wars. Ohio's children and school staff should not have others' religious beliefs forced upon them. For these reasons and more, the ACLU of Ohio urges this committee's rejection of Senate Bill 34. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Gary, for your testimony. If the 10 Commandments were left out of this bill, would you still be objecting to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, no, we would not.
All right. Are there any questions from committee members? Ranking Member Ingram.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when you were doing your research or whatever you did to come to your whole speech, are there schools that already display these founding documents other than the 10 Commandments?
Through the chair to Ranking Member Ingram, I'm not sure. I mean, 611 school districts, extrapolated that across how many schools, I don't know, but it doesn't seem clear that there's any prohibition against them doing it. If a school right now wants to post the Magna Carta, that doesn't seem to be anything that would upset any Ohio laws or policies. They could go ahead and do it, and I'm confident that they do somewhere out there. But I don't have, numbers or data off the top of my head by any means.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I spoke to a university student who told me that she went to a private school, and of course it was a religious school, but her thinking was that, especially since this bill will require for it to be in every classroom, do you believe that if indeed they're convinced to have, say, the 10 Commandments in every classroom, that will eventually, especially on our younger K through 3, our elementary students, somehow indoctrinate them as to knowing that those particular documents are there?
Through the chair to the ranking member, of course, again, this is a choice that school districts can make. It doesn't have to be the 10 Commandments. They do have to post at least one of these documents, and 10 Commandments could be a choice. Traditionally, and ongoing, courts have been very protective when it comes to government and religion. They've been very protective of young people, in particular public school students, because they're young and they're impressionable, and they are compelled by law to be there. They are the very definition of a captive audience. And that's why we have SB 34, is to impose these beliefs on a captive audience. I mean, I'm not, as my testimony said, I'm not here to pretend this has to do with historical documents or anything like that. Courts have rejected that argument. The Supreme Court rejected that exact argument in Stone versus Graham. The only thing that is left is trying to relitigate this, hoping the courts have changed in the last several decades, and let's do this over and hope that we get a different result. To the supporters, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the schools, lose the lawsuits or whatever. It doesn't change how they operate whatsoever, but they can make a pitch to do this, and I think hopefully, raise some money off of it in the meantime.
Senator Smith.
Thanks very much, Chair Brenner. Thank you very much, Mr. Daniels, for being here. 2 of the documents, 2 of the 10, are the mottos of the United States and mottos of Ohio. And so the United States motto, e pluribus unum, out of many one. Doesn't seem to be religious to me, but state of Ohio motto, with God, all things are possible. Would that perhaps run afoul of your, would that also be a concern of yours regarding Senate Bill 34? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair to Senator Smith, to be clear, it does concern us. We are opposed to it. On the other hand, we litigated that exact case here in Ohio. When the grounds here of the State House were renovated and placed outside of the building, the motto, "With God all things are possible," we did sue over that. We were ultimately unsuccessful with that, mostly because of the same kind of thinking we see here. In context, "With God, all things are possible," is Jesus explaining to his followers, in part, how one enters the kingdom of heaven, what is necessary to do that. That's religious in nature. There's no disputing whatsoever that that's religious in nature. But the supporters of things like that say, no, 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 no. There's secular applications here. You're off base by saying this is religious in nature. And courts over decades have bought that argument. Just the same way with God. God's not, you're talking uppercase God. We're talking lowercase God over here. At the ACLU, we're always talking uppercase God. It's religious in nature. And our whole outlook on this is the problem when you involve government with this type of thing. You start offending everybody left and right, no matter what their religion is, no matter what their ideology is by saying that these specifically religious things, actually they're not so religious. They're the same as all of these other historical documents or sayings or mottos or what have you. So we would be concerned about the scenario you talk about. It would not motivate us to stand here and testify against the bill, though. That ship has sailed on that particular context, but this, of course, is different here.
I got a kind of maybe a follow-up on this. If the Ten Commandments were discussed in a world history class where they were also talking about Sumerians, Babylonians, and Egyptian discussion of the same thing and about the same time, would the ACLU have any objections to that?
Mr. Chairman, I think we've been, across the country over years, on record as saying, look, no conversation or examination of history is accurate or complete without talking about the role of religion in society. The question is, how exactly far do you go with that? I can offer a counter and say, what about a document that says, don't kill, don't steal, don't lie? Don't attribute it to anything. Don't use the actual commandment language, but just there on a schoolhouse wall. Don't kill, don't lie, don't steal. Of course, that's not what a lot of SB 34 supporters want, but they want the biblical part of that. They want to make it clear it's part of the Ten Commandments and it's a religious precept. But the scenario that you're talking about, certainly schools can and do go overboard with those sorts of things, but a discussion about comparative religion or the role of religion in society, that happens in public schools right now on a daily basis, and on its face, there's nothing wrong with that.
All right, see no other questions from committee members. I thank you very much for your testimony today.